This is Jim Lawson for Bourns Pro Audio. I'm here in the Pro Audio lab. We're talking today about some applications to support an expanding line of our products. Okay, so now we're actually going to do an upgrade on a Stratocaster type pickguard. So what I've got here is a absolutely straight out standard Stratocaster type with 3 single coil pickups, a 5-way switch, and a volume control and two tone controls. So what we've done here to prepare is I've already removed the original potentiometers from this pickguard, and I've actually gone and I've installed 2 of the 3 of our Model 95 Premium Guitar Potentiometer as a preparation. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show finishing this up, and it will take you through all of the individual steps that I took to get to this point right here. So what I've done with this is I've pre-installed the tone capacitor, and when you do these upgrades, it's an opportunity at that point in time to either change the value of the capacitor in the tone control or change the kind of capacitor you have to get different tonal qualities, and that's completely up to the individual and the individual's preferences. But I like to pre-install it if I can, and it's not even soldered on here, it's just been hooked up, so it's all ready to go. When I put this down in here, the tone circuit is all set up. And what we're going to do here is then show you some nuances and some things to remember about these particular potentiometers. Typically you would see a metal potentiometer in your guitar when you remove it, and you will see that the guitar manufacturer or the previous guitar tech that had been in there, they typically use the back of the potentiometer as a point where they can loop the ground loops around. Actually, that becomes a place to solder all the ground wires to. This model and our Model 82 vintage guitar potentiometers, these are plastic housing. Obviously, you cannot solder to that. Yet this potentiometer needs to be in the ground circuit. So to allow that to happen, we provide with this product a solder tab. And if you look right here, this solder tab has been put on here already. And in fact, the capacitor, one end of the capacitor gets hooked to ground, so I've already hooked that up. This will, when it's connected to the ground loop, will ground this bushing, and this potentiometer will now be part of the ground circuit, which is the same thing as if you were to ground the back of a metal pot that you might see in your guitar. This is the tone control in this circuit, and I'm following a Bourns application note where we actually provide on our website the ability for you to look at and how to hook up a guitar of a certain type. And again, today we're working with a standard Stratocaster. So this would get inserted in here, and the ground tab is actually now making contact with this shield. That might be just enough to make sure that this potentiometer is grounded and it's connected to the other grounds. However, this shield is really paper with a little bit of conductive material on it, and it is possible that it could get cut, and then this potentiometer ends up not being in the circuit. So you'll see what I've done here is I've made a ground bus, and it starts with the input. The input jack for the guitar cord is where I mentioned before, where ground is entering the guitar. So this shielded cable, which I've used to keep noise down, this is the cable that will go from the jack of the guitar and begin into the circuitry. This shield is my ground. I bring it in here and it comes to this ground bus. So the ground bus is connected to this potentiometer and this potentiometer. They are solder lugs, and I'm going to connect it to this last one here. It also runs up to the 5-way switch, which also has a shield over it, and there are 2 places here to ground to. Now when you ground or hook up a wire to anything, we recommend that you would strip and tin the wire first. Right, now we're going to need a wire to finish this up that goes from this potentiometer pin 1 to this potentiometer pin 2. Let's just kind of roughly estimate what I need, make it a little bit longer,
cut that to length. And now we're going to strip the wire with this pair of wire strippers. Just find the right size for the wire. This happens to be, I believe it's 18 gauge. And we take the insulation off and just make sure that dress that up a little bit by twisting it. I'm going to do the other side the same way. Now I've got the wire stripped. And now what we're going to do to make sure that these don't unravel and to make sure that the solder takes to the wire as easily as it will to the terminal of the potentiometer, I'm going to tin these wire ends with my soldering iron. Just find a way to hold that there. So again, we're going to clean the tip in the damp sponge so that it's nice and shiny. Just going to use a little bit of solder here and just walk it up and not gob it all over everything, but just enough to prevent it from becoming unfrayed. And now there's solder on the end of that wire, so when I resolder it with more solder, it will readily make all the connections quickly, and I can get in and out of the soldering at the terminal quickly and be done. And now it's time to actually size it over here. So what I like to do here is just clip this off to a smaller length now that I have the solder on the wire. So my first connection will be to pin 1 of this potentiometer. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-bend this tinned end. And there's nothing else that's going to be needed to solder or to attach to this terminal. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the connection, squeeze it up as tight as I can, and I'm going to go ahead and solder this. So you'll find, and you'll see here in a minute, this is going to take very easily. So I'm just going to let this happen. Hold the soldering iron so everything gets warm and feed the solder into it until it flows. And that joint now, notice what happened is that the solder was kind of balling up, and that was because it wasn't quite warm or hot enough. The terminal wasn't hot enough. The wire wasn't hot enough for the solder to find its way. As soon as that happened, that ball went away. I saw that thing flowing, and that's the time to take the soldering iron away. Now we have a nice shiny solder joint. That's a real good solder joint, and it's mechanically very sound, and it will provide a connection there for as long as you own your guitar. Now now we got to go from this connection, and we're going to come over here to pin 2, which is in the center. Now, this potentiometer is not locked yet. I'm just going to tighten it down here a little bit. Now you want to just run this, do the best you can to be very neat with your wires. Sometimes you will open up your guitar and you will see wires everywhere. I just like things to be neat. You'll see that we've taken the wires from the pickups and we just kind of all ganged them together, and we tape them up to make them nice and straight. The other thing to remember is your guitar has a cavity where all of this electronics needs to fit, including the wires. So if you have too many wires that are too long and they're not really dressed well, you're going to find out when you go to put this back in your guitar, it's not going to fit. You're just going to end up having to get it all dressed up in the first place. So we just try to be as neat as we can here at the beginning here in the installation phase, and it will allow it to go right back through. This particular terminal already has the tone control capacitor attached to it, so I'm going to have to be fighting this a little bit to get it in here. There we go. I'm going to try to bend this over, but I think I'm going to leave it. We're going to leave that alone because it would be difficult to go ahead and bend that in that position. But anyway, in any event, we're going to go ahead and solder both the tone capacitor and this wire connection at the same time. The same process. You want to get the little bit of solder on the tip, Get that on everything else and watch it when it starts, everything starts to flow, you're done and get out. And it's, not, again, a nice shiny solder joint, and that's a very sound connection. And let's show you now setting the potentiometer into the pickguard and making sure that by using the nut that is under here, which I've installed onto the shaft first, and then the grounding lug, and then it's inserted into the pickguard. That nut that's on there first, I'm using that by adjusting it towards the body of the potentiometer or away from the body of the potentiometer to set the depth where this potentiometer will protrude on the surface of the pickguard that we will see. So if you see what I've done is this nut is not tight yet, but these other two that we've done are finished and tightened. So you just want to make sure that there's enough of the bushing showing here that you can get the nut on and get it tight. And then here is the shaft, which is going to accept this tone knob in this case. So let me go ahead and get this one tightened up a little bit. And you just be careful when you do this. Doing it on the pickguard is a little bit safer than doing it on the surface of your guitar, which is some guitars will don't have pickguards. They actually have the potentiometer going through the body. So in that regard, you want to be a little bit more careful. But if you want to actually measure how tight they are, I think the recommendation is something like 12 to 18 inch-pounds. But really, all we're really trying to do is get it snug enough that it'll stay there, because you're going to be moving this knob around, and sooner or later, if this is loose, you'll end up getting it loose, and the potentiometer will start to spin around. So you just get it snug and tight, and you'll be good to go. It won't move. So now what I have is the tone control, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this on here just to show you where the height is. If we had the potentiometer installed incorrectly, we'd have the tone knob way off the surface of the pickguard. And conversely, if it isn't protruding enough, when the knob is put back on, we end up scraping. So it's just a matter of judgment. And if you try it and it doesn't work, you get another try. All the tries are free. There's no charge for those. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here now. This guitar for a right-handed person is going to be like that, and it's typically, when I turn it to 10, I want to see 10 facing me. That's just the way it typically looks that way. So you don't have to worry about turning the pot somewhere which way. You just get it in here, and then I would turn them all on 10. I would take the knob that I'm going to install and just kind of point 10 towards me, and then it just gets pushed down on here. Carefully squeezed down, and there we go. So if you'd like a data sheet on our Model 95 Premium Guitar Potentiometers or any of our other Pro Audio products, you can find that at www.bourns.com/Pro Audio. This is Jim Lawson from Bourns Pro Audio, wishing you good playing.